Straight ahead on a special edition of Face the State, inside the state's highest court, the Connecticut Supreme Court. We will talk with the Chief Justice, Chase Rogers, also one of the longest-serving justices in Connecticut history, Richard Palmer, the unofficial historian of the court, Dennis Everly, and the newer justices, Richard Robinson and Andrew McDonald. We are here inside the Connecticut Supreme Court to give you an inside look at what goes on behind the scenes at your state's highest court.
This is Face the State with Dennis House, Connecticut's most watched local political program.
And Justices, I want to thank you all for being with us today. This is quite an honor to be here. My first question, where are the robes? So obviously you don't wear them all the time.
We don't.
When do you wear them?
Only when we're on the bench. In fact, we don't even wear them when we're walking around the building.
But Justice Palmer says sometimes you do, right, if you want, if you want to have fun. I want to ask you the first question, because a lot of people don't know, how does a case end up here in the state's highest court? I'll begin with you, Chief Justice Rogers.
Okay, well, what happens is if there's a trial and one of the parties and or their lawyers feel that they didn't get a fair trial, that a mistake had been made either as to procedure or as to the law, they can appeal to the Intermediate Appellate Court. If they're still not happy with the answer they're getting there, they can petition to have us review a case. And if three of us vote to review a decision from the appellate court, then we will take that case and it will be here. The other way the cases get here, the parties can also file a motion to ask that a case come directly to us and thereby skip the appellate court.
How often are you in session? Justice Robinson.
We're in session for, we have terms of the Supreme Court. And how many terms do we have? 8. We have 8 terms. This seems like it's 12. 8 terms, and we usually sit, it's about 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off during those 8 terms.
And anyone can come in, correct?
Yes, it's open to the public.
Is it busy in here? Do a lot of people come in?
It depends case by case. Sometimes it's quite busy. Sometimes the gallery is completely full, and other times it's pretty much just the lawyers and us.
But obviously the high-profile cases are full.
Yes.
We've had standing room only in here.
What is the average day like for you when you're not in court?
Sure. Most of our time is spent either preparing for the next sitting, reading the briefs, the records and briefs in the case, which are generally voluminous because we're talking about 18 to 20 cases each term, or working on drafting or editing opinions from previous terms that we've been assigned. And then some of us may write dissents or concurring opinions, and then reading our colleagues' opinions as well. So that keeps us busy.
How is most of the work done? Do you work together, or is it individual in your offices going through all the paperwork?
It depends on the case. We certainly talk to each other about our cases, try and work things through, particularly if we're trying to get everybody on board. But we spend a lot of solitary time as well, thinking about and then writing and editing.
This is a small group. There are only 7 of you. It's like a family. You obviously work very closely together. And Justice Robinson, you're the newest member of the family. What is it like to join the group?
Well, I practiced here my entire life, so I was sort of awestruck. These are folks who I've seen and admired, and when I came up here, it was very, very nerve-wracking. But it's a very collaborative process, and it's a very collegial group of people, and so it's a wonderful process.
What happens when someone disagrees? Do you try to persuade that justice to come to your opinion?
It depends. Usually what happens is that a majority opinion is circulated, and if one or more judges disagree with that opinion, then there will be a dissenting opinion that will circulate. And then there will be discussions, internally about those opinions. And sometimes, as the Chief Justice was suggesting, sometimes there's a significant amount of discussion between various justices, and sometimes, when it's fairly apparent that people have their minds made up, there's not as much discussion, and the opinions will pretty much go out that way.
I realize every case is different, but what is the usual time between when the lawyers leave the courtroom and a decision is rendered?
The average is 178 days.
Wow. So you have a lot of time to do research on this.
Yes, and we also have had the briefs from the parties, but as we were saying before, there are a number of cases where these are hard cases and where we don't all agree. So there's a lot of back and forth that goes on.
This is an old institution. It was formed in 1784. There are a lot of precedent cases here. Do you have to rely on them frequently? And how difficult is that? Obviously, you don't know every case in Connecticut history, or do you?
Well, the lawyers help us in their briefs. They'll
they do.
cite what they think is relevant to the case. We have clerks that help us because quite often we go beyond the briefs to make sure that there's nothing else that has a bearing on a particular issue. And then we do a lot of reading on our own as well. So precedent is very important. Stare decisis is, in almost every case, what we're going to be relying on.
What is the staffing like here? How many people work in the Supreme Court?
50, I would say 50, something like that, 50, maybe a few more.
Yeah.
And what is the requirement to work here?
It depends what the function is that they're doing. Clerks have to have a law degree, and we have 2 clerks each, one of whom is normally a new law graduate and one who's a permanent clerk for the particular justice. Then we have assistants who help us with the administrative function. My function's a little bit different, and my day's a little bit different because I also have responsibility for the administration of the judicial branch. So there are a number of people here who are working on court operations throughout the trial courts, financial issues, et cetera.
When you're out in the public doing your normal life, the grocery store, the beach, whatever you're doing, do you ever run into someone who was on the other side, a defendant, and is that difficult?
That happened to me more when I was on the trial court, and that did happen on occasion. No, people were respectful, and I certainly was respectful to them. That wasn't a problem.
This building is steeped in so much history. Do you look around at these old oil paintings of your predecessors, and it's difficult not to be inspired by this place? Do you channel them at all, or research them at all, or?
I think some of us have been here long enough, Dennis, that we actually know most of them. I put myself in that group.
You are the senior member of it.
Yes, I am, yes.
And you've been here for?
22 years now. So when I look up at the portraits on the wall, I know more than I want to admit, and I don't think it's fair to say that we channel them, but there is a real sense of history here, and it's an important aspect, I think, of what we do.
Any unusual characters over the last 300 years?
There have been some. There have been some. I would say, though, for me, when you were talking about being somewhat awestruck, every time I walk through those doors to sit on a case, I can't believe that this is our office. This is where we get to come every week.
Yeah, this is a phenomenal building, and it must sort of, what is it like when you get that call from a governor, and you were Governor Weicker, Governor Rell, Governor Malloy, when you get that call to say, I want to nominate you for the Supreme Court? Well, first of all, did they call you directly? And what was the feeling that went through your mind? And I'll begin with you, Justice Palmer.
Well, he asked me, Governor Weicker asked me if I was interested in being on the court in a social setting, and I thought he was kidding. So it
like on the golf course or something, or a party?
If you don't tell anyone this, I'll tell you, it was on the tennis court. It took me a little while to appreciate that he was serious, and later that day I went to see him, and he more formally invited me to be on the court, and I accepted his offer. Yeah.
And how about you?
Well, the governor did call me. I was at the Intermediate Appellate Court, and I said, do you mind if I shut the door? And I needed a few seconds to process what she was saying, and it was pretty exciting.
In the legal world, it's a huge honor. How about you, Justice Robinson? How did it happen for you?
The governor called me, and I lost my ability to speak for a while. And it was,
which is unusual, I might say.
Thank you. It was very special to me because I've known Governor Malloy. I met him in high school, and I got to be an attorney, one of his attorneys, when he was with the mayor's office in Stamford. So it was a long time that we've known each other.
Quick final question for Justice Palmer and Justice Robinson. Best part of the job and worst part of the job?
Boy, that's a good. The best part of the job, I think, are the cases that we get to worry about and think about on a daily basis. I feel like I'm answering like a politician. I can't think of the worst part of the job. I suppose when we have a case that's really where there's a lot of tension, you know, in terms of people feeling strongly about a case. That can be a little difficult because we're in close quarters, and it can sometimes be a little bit of a strain in that circumstance. But we managed to overcome it inevitably.
And Justice Robinson.
Doing something that I really love for a living and doing it with some great people. I think that's the best part, and there isn't the worst part.
Good enough. Well, Justice Robinson, I know that you're going to be leaving after this commercial break, along with Justice Palmer, and Chief Justice Rogers will be with us. We have 2 more justices joining us. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we'll be right back after this commercial break. We welcome your comments either on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or my blog at DennisHouse.tv.